like the stars in outer space. Something about you radiates. It feels so nice and it feels so nice, yeah.
Welcome back to the Starlit Success Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Gaines. And if you were still following along this little mini series on the messy metal, we're still talking about all the mess that we're in right now with this major relocation. Last week, we talked about how hard it was to share the news of the move with some people and how wildly different their reactions were and how some weren't exactly the most supportive. But this week, I want to talk about the wide range of emotions this move has brought up for me. You know, people have asked throughout this whole process, are you sad? There were times where I actually felt guilty for not feeling sad because I've just been so excited. But I'd say the last few weeks, that has changed quite a bit. And it has turned into kind of a joke when people ask, how are things going? Or how are you feeling? And the response is pretty bipolar, to be honest. I mean, there was a point where I was telling Eddie that I was having good Florida days and bad Florida days because there were some days that I was just so excited. You know, I was looking up beaches and restaurants and all of the different parks and things that we could do and how far was it to drive to Miami or Orlando or the Keys and that kind of thing. And then there's days where it's maybe gloomy here or something. And all I can think about is how sad I am and how holidays aren't going to be the same and how we're not going to have snow for Christmas and just things like that. But I'd say over the last couple weeks, I've been a lot more emotional than I have been this whole year. And I think a lot of it has to do with Javen graduating and just the emotions of him moving on and leaving the nest and that kind of thing. It's the ending of one chapter and the beginning of another. So it's really, I mean, it's bittersweet. All of it's bittersweet. I think it actually makes it harder the time of year that we're moving because it's summertime. And summertime in Wisconsin is super fun. We play volleyball, we do a lot of parties and cookouts, and we do camping, and we see our friends so much more in the summer than we do in the winter. So it just makes it that much harder that we're going to be missing out on that extra time that we normally would have with them. But then I also think about we're going to be able to spend time with family that we have down in Florida that we've barely ever seen. So it's like we're kind of treating the people that we have had all of this time with and made all these memories with for new memories with family that we haven't been able to do that with. It's just a really weird combination of feelings because it feels like I'm actively grieving our old life, while at the same exact time, I'm super excited for the new one, if that makes any sense. It's odd though, because it makes you wonder, you know, when you have those really sad days or those days where you're really scared or you're stressed, you start to wonder like, am I making the right decision? Should I be doing this? I think naturally it's really easy to mistake those feelings of, you know, being scared or being sad or any kind of negative emotion as signs that maybe we shouldn't move forward. Maybe we are making a mistake. Maybe this isn't the path that we're supposed to be on. For us, like, it's not like we've had a bad life here. We've had a great life here. We've started so many traditions with our kids and our family and our friends. We're not leaving because we're unhappy with any of that. And sometimes it feels like, you know, maybe we're letting them down or we're abandoning them. And if you've been listening along, there's also days where I've been completely stressed out, completely overwhelmed at how much is involved in the logistics of the move itself. So with all of these emotions kind of floating around, it can be difficult to process. But if you've followed me for the last, 30, I think we're at 30 episodes today, you know, I talk a lot about paying attention to your emotions and using them as like your compass in life. Chazzy decided to join us. Lay down. And don't get me wrong, I still truly believe that your emotions are what you should follow. I think it's a lot easier to pay attention to your emotions than it is sometimes to listen to your logical brain. Sometimes we can live so much in our head that your body tends to know the answer before your brain does. But what I have been feeling is that sometimes we can confuse listening to all of our emotions as our guide, which is super confusing if you have a wide range of emotions from excitement to sadness. What are you supposed to listen to? But I think the mistake that we can make is assuming that if we're making the right decision, that it's just going to feel good throughout the whole process. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I like to look at it as if you've ever owned a house and ever done any major renovation projects, you can kind of understand how this feels. Our last house, we completely gutted our bathroom, our kitchen, and our basement. And initially it was so exciting. It was like, oh, we're going to have this brand new room. And oh, this is how I want to decorate it. And I'm on Pinterest and I'm saving all of these different pins and picking up paint colors and fixtures and all kinds of stuff. And just having that vision of how nice it's going to look and how much more functional it's going to be. And then you actually start the project, right? So that initial feeling of excitement to take on this thing and create this new change, from that to the work of it. And having contractors in and out of your house and your room not being functional. You're living in a construction zone. For the kitchen, we were doing dishes in the bathtub. We didn't have a stove for like 3 weeks. There were days contractors didn't show up at all. There were times where the contractors were there for weeks longer than they should have been. There were times where things just didn't get done or they were done wrong and I had to have them redo it. I'm not going to lie, I broke down in tears throughout at least 2 of those projects on more than one occasion. At the time, I thought that, like, should I have even done this? Like, was this a mistake? Should I have just painted and gotten some new decorations or something? Like, why did I do this? But we got through it and we had a beautiful kitchen and a beautiful basement and a beautiful bathroom. And I was so happy at the end. And I remembered why I started it to begin with. Everything worked out. So my point is, your initial desire, the emotions that were associated with that big change that you wanted to make, that big project you wanted to take on, that really tough goal that you set for yourself, whatever emotions that you felt as part of that initial desire. So usually happiness, joy, excitement, that is what you pay attention to. Those aren't always going to be the same emotions that you're going to have throughout the journey. So the emotions that I felt when we made the decision to move to Florida was that it was excitement, it was opportunity, it was freedom, it was adventure. The journey, the process hasn't given me those same emotions. It hasn't been easy, but I just have to remember the emotions that sparked this desire in the first place. And honestly, I feel like when you have these conflicting emotions, that might just mean that whatever it is that you are moving on from or letting go of, you just really cared about. It just really mattered to you. Because if it didn't, you wouldn't feel this way. If you hated whatever it was that you're leaving, then you're not going to feel those feelings of sadness because you're like good riddance. So for us, it's a big move, but for you, it could be leaving a relationship or a friendship or a job. And there might be components to those things that you really loved. Sometimes it's hard to leave what we're comfortable with, but usually there's a reason that you want to leave in the first place. There's something that is out of alignment with whatever it is that you're experiencing. And if the feeling of moving on, starting something new, setting a new goal, making a major transition excites you, then that's what you have to pay attention to. That doesn't mean that whatever you're leaving was completely worthless or a waste of time. It just means that it's no longer serving you. And sometimes you have to let go of things in order to make the space that's needed to allow those new things to come in. You can't bring in new things if you don't have the room for them. I had a vision for my dream life, and living in a tropical, warm climate was part of that. So if my vision is a warm tropical climate, then I've got to let go of the sub-zero winter climate. Your desire, the emotions that are associated with that, is your compass, and it's your duty to follow it. So if you have these dreams or this vision or this goal or anything that you're trying to achieve, think about whatever you're doing now. Is it helping you move towards that goal, or is it keeping you where you are now? What is something that you need to let go of? What are some things that are no longer serving you that do not fit into that new vision? So whatever journey that you're on in achieving this grand vision, give yourself permission to feel sad or scared or stressed, because it's going to happen. It's not going to be all butterflies and rainbows the whole time, especially when you have to let things go. But just don't let those emotions be your guide. Remember the emotions that drew you towards that decision to begin with. And focus on what it is that you're working towards. Don't focus on how you're feeling all of the negative emotions right now. So when I was feeling all of this turmoil, I just kept focusing on what I wanted it to feel like in the end. I just kept having to remind myself, like, focus on what it is that you want and the reason that you decided to make this decision in the first place. Think about it. Like, is this fear or is this growth? And also reframe it. If you are leaving your hometown, maybe you will inspire someone else to do the same. If you're leaving a relationship, maybe you're actually helping that other person. Maybe that other person will find someone that's better suited for them and you as well. Maybe it's just uncomfortable in the moment, but in the end, it's all going to work out even better than you planned. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. These episodes are probably going to be kind of short these next few weeks because we are actually leaving in a couple weeks and I am not even going to have my setup anymore. I don't even know how I'm going to record. I really want to keep showing up every week. So they might just have to get shorter and shorter, but please bear with me. I appreciate your support throughout this major transition. And if you are in your messy middle of whatever major change you're making in life, I just want to encourage you to keep going and keep focusing on your why and keep focusing on that end result, that end goal that you were so excited to start to begin with. And don't let all of these ugly feelings get in the way of that. All right. Thank you for spending your time and energy with me today, and I will see you on the next episode.
It's all so bright.